So, a prenuptial agreement or prenup is a contract between people who are getting married that is entered into prior to the marriage. A postnup, on the other hand, is a contract entered into by two married people. Both postnup and prenup contracts cover a variety of things, but predominantly they talk about what are and what are not marital assets. That's the primary reason that those are entered into. That and maybe alimony after the fact. It really is a financial document for most intents and purposes. What typically happens when couples get married is that everything that they earn or acquire during the marriage becomes marital. Prenuptial agreements can allow spouses to deviate from that. For instance, a person may own a business prior to the marriage and they want to keep that business separate, but also any additional income or value in that business to remain separate as well. If both parties agree to that and it doesn't financially impoverish the lesser earner at the time of divorce, that's generally going to be enforced by a Tennessee court. The key to enforcement is that these are fair, which means that there's full financial disclosure on the front end, that there's no duress, like nobody's been, put their back up against the wall to enter into one of these agreements. They're doing it with their eyes wide open. And at the time of divorce, it's not patently unfair. For example, if two able-bodied people entered into a prenup and during the marriage the lesser earner somehow becomes disabled, a prenup, like the alimony provisions especially, may not be adequate to care for that spouse. So a Tennessee court may modify that. But generally, if it's fair, then a Tennessee court will enforce a prenup. Debts and inheritances, as well as even some strange things like how you're going to parent your future children, can be included in a prenuptial agreement. The key is to make these somewhat normative. The wilder a provision gets, the less likely a court will be to enforce it. Like, for instance, if you decided that you would agree that your children would be vegan growing up, but for some health reason, one of your children can't be a vegan, a court's definitely not going to enforce that as a lifestyle on a child who wasn't even born at the time that you entered into the agreement. Prenuptial agreements are actually very complex documents, and there's a lot of things that have to be in place to make sure they're enforceable, especially when it comes to notice, especially when it comes to disclosures. So this is not the kind of document that I recommend pulling off of something like LegalZoom and doing yourself. I mean, by all means, pull off an initial draft to give yourself an idea of the types of things you're going to need to think about if you want to. But this type of document is one you're going to want to have an attorney review, if not prepare, and I would suggest prepare. Many people look at, prenuptial agreements as kind of rude, definitely not romantic, but they are very practical, especially if someone is entering into a second marriage or if one of the parties stands to have, a large inheritance and their family would, withhold that inheritance if adequate legal protections, aren't in place on the front end. So let's look at it from a practical standpoint. It's not a harbinger of divorce at all. And in fact, some studies would say people who enter into prenups, have those financial discussions on the front end, avoid that conflict during the marriage, actually end up doing better. If you're considering a prenuptial or postnuptial agreement and you'd like us to help you out with that, feel free to give us a call and we'll go over your circumstances with you in a free case evaluation.